Bonjour tout le monde. Nah, that's not in French, just kidding. Martin Fournichgar here. That's gonna be 510, two tables. There's good stuff in that, so listen and enjoy and have fun. Yeah, Jiggy here for finally a nice 510 session. I'm gonna be playing two tables, live commentary. That's pretty much it. This one's gonna be focusing a lot on. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's gonna be focusing a lot on specific players and specific reads and how to adapt and how I'm gonna make certain plays against some players and other plays against other players and stuff like that. I've talked in the past about maybe a bit of my reluctancy, if that's a word, to uh, make videos at 510 on Full Tilt because that's pretty much my bread and butter game and I play there every day and I don't want to give up too many reads on everybody and stuff, but I decided to compromise and make a two tables video so I don't have to give off that many reads on two tabling. I'm gonna be try to dissect hands very specifically and yeah, just play good and talk about it. And talk about my reads and stuff. So we're gonna be going over the two tables. Table on the left, I've chose two deep tables because I still think that is way more interesting. If you want to see non-deep tables, tell me at some point. I still think it's way more interesting than non-deep 100 big blinds tables because even nowadays it's full of short stacks and whatever. But yeah, table on the left is pretty much as tough as a 510 table you're gonna find on Full Tilt. And these days we've got me and four other guys that I consider good rigs, and I don't consider that many guys good rig at that limit nowadays. Eagle, J Vans, Ninja, Black Swan. I'm gonna be, depending on the spots that arise, I'm gonna talk about more specific reads later. Table on the right, we've got Ninja Sanchez and Eagle, who are two good rigs as well. Pork Tom, which is very, very tricky, and another good guy, I think a bit underestimated. Plays higher sometimes, and he has a lot of moves in his arsenal. Certainly does not play straightforward, let's say. And two other guys I'm not really familiar with. A guy from Australia, one, and Bucks that I don't know, and P-Man that I've played a bit in the past, but like my only read I can remember is that I remember that he's bad, and that's pretty much it. Here with one backdoor hard. Nice board to see bet. No brainer. Against Pork Time, we might be defending pretty like some connectors, some stuff like that in his range. And now he check raises me pretty big, more than 4x. No brainer. He could be doing that. That's the fun thing about Pork Time. He could be like doing that with like King Queen, trying to alt level me because we have pretty deep insta rig and stuff. But now it's no brainer. I don't have any other choice than to fold. I don't think he ever has stole air to make it to that sizing. I think if he had air and wanted to make a play on that board, he would go way smaller than that. So that might be big draw set, of course, and stuff like that. Don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, those things. I don't have a HUD, sorry guys. I know a lot of you have been asking me for a HUD, but I haven't used a HUD in like a couple of months now, and I've tried to make it work on my laptop, and for some reason it does not want to work. Like no matter what I do, it does not open or whatever, and I was getting pretty frustrated with that, so I just gave up. I do have my tracker opened here, so if like if some spots arise or whatever, I'm gonna be giving you like the stats, pre-flop stats for the players. I'm just gonna search them, but yeah, that's it, because pre-flop stats like PFR and VPIP are basically the only two stats that I ever use when I do use a HUD, so that's pretty much it. Payman is sitting out, which is a bad news because he looked like the worst player at the table, I think, unless this one and Bucks guy is really awful. While I don't have much to do, I'm gonna go over the players. Let's start on the left with Jay Vance, who's a really good reg that I don't like having on my left. Capable of making moves, capable of giving me a pretty hard time. Good player, deep stack, better than others. And that's pretty much it. I mean, he's just a thinking player. So as far as specific reads on specific board goes, it's pretty tough to call them out in the air right now. I'm gonna try to see how he reacts later. And here I'm gonna see bet again with one backdoor. I always check my backdoor. That's something that I haven't talked about a lot when making videos, but I do always check my backdoors if I want either to c-bet or not c-bet. I'm way more likely to c-bet something if I have air but one or two backdoor, since I'm going to be turning a lot of draws, which will be able to add me some equities to fire a second barrel and stuff like that. On boards where I don't really want a multi-barrel, I don't have any of those boards right now in mind, but yeah, boards that I'm not likely to multi-barrel, I'm looking less at the backdoors, and I might even check back my backdoors because I just want to see, since I'm gonna delay my c-bet most of the time, I'm gonna be able to like not get check raise on the turn and see if I get some backdoors there, not get check raise on the flop and see if I do get some backdoors on the turn before trying to make my opponent fold. Here ace 8 suited, I might defend that 200 big blinds deep, because 200 big blinds deep is like any ace suited, basically the nuts. I might 3-bet, I might call against some players. Against Eagle, I don't want to do that right now, he's a pretty good opponent. I think I'd rather 3-bet here than call if I'm to play the end, because I'm in the small blind with J Vance on the big blind that I don't know what he's going to be doing, so he might very well repop me here and squeeze, and then I just have to fold. And Eagle is pretty early, he's not under the gun plus one, so it's a 5-ended game. But his range pretty much crushes my range, like he might have some worse suited aces, but not as many as better aces that he's gonna have. So if I do call, I'm gonna be dominated a lot. I'd rather just take the initiative and 3-bet and try to over-represent my hand, basically, because by trying to play the end with the soul value of the end by calling out of positions is gonna be pretty tough, I think. So yeah, I might 3-bet sometimes, decided not to just because timing was not that good, and I ended up time banking before thinking about 3-betting, so I just gave up. As far as Eagle goes, I haven't played with him in a long while, like maybe 6 months ago, maybe even more, about a year ago. Let's say 9 months ago, he was playing a lot of 5-10 and even some 10-20 on full tilt, but I think he got a huge downswing. I considered him pretty good at that time. I think he had a huge downswing and he dropped back to like 2-4, and I think he pretty much crushed the 2-4 and 3-6 game, and now he's back at 5-10 doing his stuff. So yeah, he's pretty good. Here, I'm certainly not happy about getting called by two players who are both good and deep and in position on me with my ace-10 off. Not a hand that I'm gonna be looking to get involved like in a super big pot very often. And that's a good example of something that I'm going to be looking to check. If I bet here, likeliness of getting a raise is just way too big against both of these guys. They know they can use the board, which pretty much nails their range of calling in position that deep, and the stack sizes. Because if they raise here, I'm in the pretty bad spot unless I have a set, a straight, like top two pairs, or a big draw, and that's pretty much it. So they're often gonna go ahead and like raise any gut shot, any like whatever. So I certainly don't want to bet and get raised and don't know what to do. So I prefer to check. Hope it's gonna be checked down and I turn it trips, which is obviously the best thing to happen to my end. Otherwise, I'm gonna be looking to check call, saving me from a very, very dirty spot. Sorry, that could happen. So I turn trips. Now I bet, of course, because I have the nuts and my hand is super underrepresented, but both guys ended up having nothing at all. But yeah, I would be doing that check against two guys on that specific boards where there are a lot of possible draws, possible gut shots, any flush draw, anything is gonna raise me. He's even gonna like raise sometime a pair of sevens, just because he knows that it puts me in such a weird spot, and then he's gonna be able to work a lot on future streets. I just don't want to bet and get raised, so I decided to check call and see what happens after. And I would do the same with like aces or stuff like that, but I would bet stuff like my draws, like not so big draws, smaller draws, gut shots and stuff like that. I'm gonna bet as like see my pure bluff on the nines. I decided to delay. I decided to bet the turn here. Because there were too many draws. Didn't want to give up a free card. He might pay me with worse sometimes on turn. I think the flop check's pretty standard. But yeah, back to the ace-10. I'm going to be betting with like, what I was saying basically as a range. And check calling a lot of medium strength hands and betting my monsters a lot because I'm obviously going to get raised a lot. Here, pretty much a worst card in deck, I think, to barrel here. Since he calls with pretty much all of his gutters on the flop. Some got there, some just picked up a pair plus straight draw, which he's not gonna fold, and he might not even fold on the third barrel because he knows that I'm gonna be two barreling a lot if I have like any gutter or any flush draw that just got there on the turn. So he knows that I might be three barreling a lot. So since I don't want to three barrel because I think I'm gonna get looked up liked a lot. Plus he pretty much always has at least a pair on that turn. I think it's just helpful to two barrel here. I'm just gonna give up. And I could hear some people saying as an argument like, if they're raising so often when you bet with so many like weekends, why aren't you just betting and trying to go broke or whatever? The fact is they're gonna raise all their monsters, and I'm pretty much dead against monsters to run or something. So trying to put in 200 big blinds here with that hand is just suicide. Because when they bluff, like I bet they raise and then I try to go broke. And that's good for a lot of hands. That would be good for like aces or something like that on that board. When they end up like bluffing, I just win their raise basically. And when they do end up having like a monster, I'm getting crushed for 200 big blinds, which is a disaster. I'd much rather like bet, 3-bet something like ace-9 here if I think the likeliness of them raising me with not much is too big. I would balance like pretty much polarized range of like super big draws, straights and sets, and yeah, nothing at all basically is stuff that I'm looking to like bet 3-bet and then fold to a shove, which not a lot of people expect on that type of board, but I think is a powerful move to counter very aggressive opponents. Ace-10 is certainly not the type of hands that I would be looking to do that with. Yeah, I talked about that ace-queen give up, which is pretty standard. And yeah, that's pretty much it. One thing about that ace-queen give up, there are players here like, oh, sorry, not that good players that I might be looking to 3-barrel on here. And here's my reasoning, is that if I bet the flop and then they call, and we're talking about like pretty nitty players who don't think I'm gonna be like 3-barreling that often, who don't view me that aggressive, who don't think I'm super over aggressive. That's the dynamic that I'm gonna be looking for here. Let's say I bet the flop and they call, turn comes like that. I pretty much don't expect them to like ever fold on the turn. They will sometimes fold when they have like total float or whatever. But my reasoning is that if a nitty player here, 200 big blinds deep, does not raise the turn, they pretty much always have a one pair type hand. They would most of the time that type of player is gonna like take the opportunity of the draws arising to raise any set on the turn for sure, any like two pairs or whatever. Maybe not like bottom two pairs, but it's not even a possibility on that board. I'm gonna come back on that later. I'm gonna just call these tens. Here, I think re-raising against a good player who has position on me is pretty much suicidal at 200 big blinds deep. There are dynamics that I'm going to be looking to re-raise on with that type of hand, but against Porktum, I don't have that kind of dynamic. I think he's going to defend a lot in position, like way too much for me to be able to maneuver well post-flop with my tens in a re-raise spot, unless I flop a set. So I just call and try to defend my way out of that pot, out of position. Flop goes check check. Turn I check, he bets 50. I'm gonna be calling that and probably check folding to a river bet. I think he is dealing a C bet and then giving up quite some times. An ace is rivering. I don't think I can like. The crappy thing about that is that he's probably betting like king queen for value, but then again, I just don't win the hand, and I don't think I can check raise him to make him fold anything, and now he just like bets absurdly big, which is weird. That's really, really weird, but you might have queens that want to get a call from any ace, basically, because there are a lot of aces in my range. You might have an ace himself, like an ace jack that decided to check back on the flop, which he's gonna do quite some time at 200 big blinds deep, and now trying to get a call from like queens and stuff like that, thinking that I'm gonna be leveling myself, or he might be bluffing, but on that type of board, I think it is pretty unlikely. Although it is somewhat likely coming from this player that he might be bluffing and he might think that I'm gonna be folding like basically 100% of my range here. But I don't think it's the case right now, so I'm just gonna fold it. I could find a call here if we had a very aggressive dynamic in a specific session, and if I was thinking that he would just like try to win a pot right away off of me. I could be finding a call sometimes. He might have like Jack 10, King Jack that decided to fire the turn. Yeah, any gutter that got there on the turn, basically. He could have those. No, it's the other table. Yeah. And then he thinks that he's making me fold like 100% of my range, which is pretty much almost true. I'm gonna be looking him up sometimes with like ace jack, because I have blocker to an ace and he doesn't have queens like every single time there, and stuff like that. So he's not making me fold 100% of my range. So it's less likely to be a bluff because he's aware of this stuff. And what was the other end that I was talking about before coming to that end? Yeah, the ace queen end. Yeah, there are players. If basically my reasoning is that if they don't raise a turn on that ace queen end, they never have two pair plus, and I'm gonna be able to take them off like things like 8-9 on the river when the draw does not complete, like basically every single time. So it's a good 3-barrel spots against some players, but Javan is not that player. Here I decided to play the 5-8 suit in position. If the button had been a better player, I probably might not have done that, but here I'm pretty comfortable doing it at 200 big blinds. Flop top pair, I don't think I have. I could be finding a raise sometimes. No, I don't have a replayer yet. And that's happening now. I could be raising sometimes against some players on the flop, but here I decided to make the standard play and call, and I'm just gonna try to check it down. I think there's not much value in betting the turn. And now if he bets, I certainly have to call, because if he has air, he's basically betting that 100% of the time with that king river. So he might have the king, and he's gonna have it quite some time. But if he has like any suited connector that decided not to bet the turn, any like low suited connector or something like that. But at the same time, any connector is like a gutter on the turn. Like every single connector is a gutter on the turn. I expect him to be firing 100% of his gutters on the turn with that queen scare card. So there are not that many. I think I'm gonna fold actually. There are really not that many ends left from his under the range gun that did not hit that river. Since any connector, like at all on that specific board, is at least a gutter on the turn. It's basically a gutter on the turn, or like a pair of whatever, but he's not betting those on the river. I expect him to fire that, and that's pretty much the big part of his air range from under the gun. What I'm gonna be left against is like ace something suited that he might fire as well on the turn. Quite some time. If he has a diamonds, he's firing for sure. Like ace jack and ace 10, he's not firing the turn and firing the river, and that's pretty much it. But comparing to what it and sometimes he's just gonna give up as well. So comparing to what hit that river, like basically any king. But at the same time, there are not that many king that he raises from under the gun, like ace king, of course, king jack, king 10 suited. But at the same time, with his timing on the turn, I remember that he like took some time before checking on the turn. He might have had something like tens or jacks as well that is now trying to get paid off a value bet from a smaller pair, and he might have had something like sometimes he's gonna have like, I don't know, aces or something like that, but that's not too much of a worry. So I would have to basically like poker stuff a range that I just gave him and see if it's a call. But yeah, decided not to. Maybe I should have, just for information. Just because it's under the gun range. In my mind, there's a lot of king like suited in there, but not that many. That's a funny thing. More aces suited. He's definitely betting ace 3, ace 5 suited on turn. He's definitely betting any diamonds. So we're left with still some aces suited for sure. Ace 10, ace jack 2 that decided not to fire the turn. We're left with two tens and jacks that I think are going to be looking to get paid off that river a lot. Since I don't have any king on my flop calling range except for total floats, and I don't have any queen ever because I did not bet the turn basically. Pretty interesting. But maybe I should have called, just like I said, for information. And sometimes my point too is that sometimes he's just gonna give up. He's just gonna give up on that river because he knows that I might be calling with basically any pair at all that I'm gonna have like almost every single time when I call pre-flop, call the flop. He must put me on like middle small pair or something like that. So he knows I'm going to be calling that quite a lot of times, so he might give up as well. So it's pretty tricky. Alright, flop, a couple of backdoors and under pair. I'm going to be betting that. Try to like protection if both players have nothing, and try to get them off something like a pair of eggs before the river. And since like the scariest player here is going to be Ninja Sanchez, since Black Swan is the like original reason decided to check, and I expect him to bet quite some time here when he's the original raiser. When he's checking, it's very often to just check fold. And the player that I'm going to be playing the end against most of the time here is going to be Ninja Sanchez. And with the stack deepness here, I am going to be able to like turn a lot of backdoors and fire again, and maybe get there on the river and get paid off the backdoors, or I'm certainly going to be able to make him fold like anything that is not a pair of queens up to the river or something like that. So I do have position, a lot of room, so I decided just to bet. Here we see that this Australian is just another Australian who's just repopping very, very small pre-flop in position. They pretty much always do that. and I decided to call the ace-9 suited. I might forbet that sometimes, and maybe I should have forbet. I'm gonna definitely be forbidding that sometimes, almost for value. It's like a bluff slash value. I just take back the initiative, and I force him not to do exactly what he's doing now, which is like playing with me in position and basically forcing me to turn my hand face up quite a bit. But since they're still gonna be making mistakes even with the initiative and all that stuff, I'm certainly looking to call and then play the end. I think it's good enough to play out of position there. I'm gonna be calling a second barrel always. I'm not sure yet about third barrel. I'm gonna see like the sizing and everything for a third barrel. We call second one, see what happens basically. Pretty much one of the worst cards in the deck. Because I know he's firing all his gutters, all his opens and stuff like that, and like pretty much everything just that was not. And he ends up checking back king queen, which is awfully weak in my opinion here. But I think I played the end real fine. Like yeah, the jack pretty much completes everything that did not beat me to that point. And you probably check back. He must know, like, he must be another Australian under a new nickname, because to check back that, I think he very must be afraid of me basically check raising, check shoving that river, which I'm gonna do sometimes, and then he didn't know if he would have to call or fold or whatever, so he decided that he did not have any more value to get out of my hand. So he probably knows who I am, because to check back that, like I said, you have to be scared of facing a check raise. And with the stack sizes, it was a perfect stack size for me to check raise him as a bluff or with a full house or whatever. It was just fitting well with the bets. Here I did check the flop because I don't think I have any value and I don't want to get check raised like ever. Turn is no-brainer call. River, I don't think I can get any value, because the thing is, on that river, I'm gonna get check raised quite a lot by a good player. If I do end up betting, like, the top of my range here is gonna be, the way I play the end is gonna be like 9-10 maybe, and I'm most like probably betting. So the very top of my range here, if I'm betting for value, is a 9, and if he check raises, he can make me fold like all of that, like always, all of that, because he can very possibly represent any flush, any full house or stuff like that. So for him, that's a really, really good check raising bluff situation river. If he thinks that I'm gonna be betting my straights, I don't think he's like hero calling that often with like his jacks here. The way the board played out, maybe he would have called with jacks, but then again, that's pretty much the like top of his range that is check calling. I don't expect him to have jacks that often. He's gonna have air quite some time, and then betting is completely useless against air. He's gonna have like ace high with the ace of hearts, but I don't think he's gonna call a bet with that. And all in all, I just do think that I'm getting check raised way too often on that specific board in that specific situation, because for him, like I said, it's perfect situation to check raise me. So I decided not to go crazy and just check back my idiot end straight, which I think is by far the best play. And I don't remember what I was talking about before that. Yeah, that hand. I think I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say about that hand. Quite some interesting stuff happening right now. Love that. I did discuss a lot of things. Yeah, I don't think I missed anything about that. And like I said, I could have 4-bet pre-flop because they're gonna call in position quite some time, and against like a battle of, okay, that's pretty important, pretty interesting stuff that I'm gonna be saying too, is that they do, like the Australians and the Italians who make that kind of play, re-raising super small in position pre-flop, they very often have like a medium strength hand, something like king queen suited, that they want to raise, something like ace jack, something like ace 10, something like any ace suited, any small pair too, and stuff like that. That they basically want to raise and raise small enough to be able to call a 4-bet at that deepness. But in a battle of like medium strength hands, which I have and which I think he's very likely to have because they do that quite some time, the player who's going to win that battle is often the guy with the initiative. So by 4-betting, I'm not doing that for value or for as a bluff, basically. Neither of those things. I'm just doing that to give myself the opportunity to have the initiative after the flop and like push a c-bet very credibly, basically, to make him fold like anything that he did not hit, because I don't expect him to play me back too often. If I do 4-bet and then the flop comes, I don't know, all low flop, and then I c-bet, I'm gonna win the pot very, very often in a battle of two medium strength hands. So it's not pure bluff or it's not pure value pre-flop. It's just to take back the initiative and give myself a better opportunity to win the pot, better like likeliness of winning the pot, just a better situation overall than calling out of position and then playing the pot. But I still think that ace-9 suited was very, very playable by calling out of position, such a small re-raise, so I ended up calling. And I think the post-flop play was no-brainer against these guys to call 2 streets and reevaluate on the river. He's going to be 2-barreling a lot and giving up a lot too, and maybe like firing out a river bet too and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really hate his check back on the river. Like I said, I am very likely to check shove that river for sure. I'm gonna have jacks here a lot of times. I'm gonna have queen jack. I'm gonna have nines. I'm gonna have ace queen that I play like that because I expect him to 2 and 3 barrel a lot. I'm gonna be slow playing those, and I'm not calling that often with worse on that river. So maybe he did make the best play against me, because I too could like check shove that river as a bluff. Trying to make him fold all of his bluffs plus stuff like king queen if he's betting those. If he's not betting those, check shoving is definitely not a good idea. But yeah, he was fearing that and thinking I did not have much value and was not called by worse that often. So it shows us that he's at least a thinking player who's just not like betting because he has like the nuts. Now I flopped up 2 after defending on the big blind. I decided to dunk lead that because I did not really want check raise. I think dunk leading is pretty much my best option on that board. I think check raising is like over evaluating my range a bit. Now I think it's a no-brainer to bet again on turn, and I'm gonna bet the river because I would bet that river as a bluff pretty much any time, and he's certainly calling with a jack, and he's not calling check raise with a jack as well. So, and he folds. Just that. But yeah, if I have a flush draw here, like naked flush draw that did not get there on the river, I'm certainly bluffing that scare card. He is gonna be bluffing quite some time too, but he might even check back like a single jack on that river, which is what I'm pretty much scared of here. I'm gonna call that. That's pretty loose. Don't do it. And I'm gonna flop the nuts. I'll go ahead and dunk lead that one as well. I could check raise. Dunk leading is fine as well, but I think he's checking back a lot of aces with no clubs here. Like ace jack, no clubs, he's probably checking that back. And I probably have 3 streets on value if I start dunk leading here, so I prefer dunk lead. If he has something super strong like a set, he's gonna raise anyway, and we're gonna get it in. So both options are good. But yeah, the 9-10 I decided not to go for the river check raise because like full houses are in my range and not in his range. He might check back a single jack on the river sometime, fearing of getting check raised once again. That's the type of spot where you like you have to be scared of a check raise, and you want to be looking at for like check raise river bluffs or whatever. If I do get to that river with air, with tall air, uh, what the hell? That's way too big for a squeeze. Like, I think no matter what he has, I think it's gonna be very difficult to balance. And he does some weird stuff like that, Pork Tom, which I don't think is really good. But anyway, yeah. This board, in my situation, if I do happen to get to the river, like with air, like let's say the ace-high flush draw or something like that, I am gonna be check raising as a bluff very often. Because check raising with a full house is kind of standard here. And since, like I said, absolutely no full house are in his range except the very worst full house, which is pair of sevens, which is basically when he's facing a check raise, like the same as a pair of aces or whatever. Because I'm not check raising for value ever with worse than like full house here probably. Now I'm getting 4-bet, which kind of sucks. I did want to like play that, but oh well. Deal. Here I am gonna be checking. I don't want to bet because he's gonna play me back way too often. He's gonna make some plays with a lot of gutters and stuff like that. That I think check calling one street is gonna be better against, because I think he's gonna bluff one street with his tall air and his straight draws as well quite sometimes. I could check fold, I could just go ahead and check fold, but I think he's firing like 100% of the time when I do check. And since I would do that with like an ace jack or something like that, and I think he's aware of that, I think he cannot go ahead and multi-barrel like automatically profitably. So I do end up deciding to check call one street, which is, I'm not sure I like that play. All on retrospect, I might just check fold it if I'm to check. Now I certainly have to fold, because I'm going to be facing a third barrel a lot, and you would like to 3-barrel with ace jack and ace queen for value all day. I'm getting crushed by those. I could go ahead and check all his 3 barrels since he's so aggressive, and he's basically 3-barreling probably all of his draws, but I'm not sure about the 3-barrel part, so I don't want to like check all the turn and then not be sure if I have to check all the river, so I'm going to be making a lot of river mistakes when I don't know his frequency of barreling with a draw here. So I'm just cutting off my mistake right now by check folding the turn basically. And yeah, I was talking about the yeah, that one. Like I said, when I do get there with air on the river and I check, when he bets, I think he's gonna have like himself a missed draw lot, or like a naked jack, which is like the very top of his range, apart from the pair of sevens, which might not even call the turn anyways. So, and I think I can make a lot of people like, this guy, I'm not sure, he might do the hero call with a naked jack if I end up check raising that river, but I'm really not sure, and I don't think he does it. And that's why I just let out and hoped he had a jack, because he's certainly calling single bet with a jack, because I'm like, he expects me to be bluffing a lot like that. But yeah, check raising as a bluff, that's a perfect situation basically too, for river check raise bluffs, and for big bluffs basically in general, when you do have the nuts in your own range, but your opponent doesn't have it. It's even better if your opponent is not aware of that situation, that he's not aware that he does not have the nuts in his own range. And now he is, so it's a bit less good, but that specific board just crushes my range so badly that check raising river as a bluff is pretty much a perfect play that's going to go ahead and work very, very often. And yep, that's pretty much it. That's a lot of talking, but I think it's pretty interesting. Pretty happy with how it's turning out so far in the session, how things are turning out. And I was expecting that against such interesting opponents. Don't know if I missed something while talking. Might have missed 1 or 2 spots. If I did, just come back to me with those. Here, the King 9 suited. I would defend it on the big blind against a loose pair like Eagle. I would 3-bet it sometimes. Now, I certainly don't have much of a of a choice. I might forbet that code a lot of time actually, because I know Black Swan is bluffing quite some time, but with the dynamic that we have, I think he basically expects me to be forbidding that code a lot. So he might shove over as a bluff quite a lot because he has perfect stack. If I make it like 270 or 280, he has a perfect stack to like shove over any ace low suited because he might think that I'm forbidding as a bluff quite some time in. If I forbid and get bluffed out from like a portion of his range, and he's obviously gonna shove all of his like pair of tens and up against me, and ace, probably ace queen, but I don't think he 3-bets it that much in the first time. Yeah, ace king for sure. And if I do get shoved by a bluff portion of his range, like pretty large bluff portion of his range, too, it just sucks to like 4-bet fold because I'm gonna get shoved on way too often against some less aggressive players. I could have seen a cold 4-bet here because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be full of crap quite some time. Here I'm just gonna be delaying my c-bet. I still can represent something like a pair of tens that did not want to bet that flop, or a pair of sevens or eights or nines or whatever, if I check and then bet the turn. So I'm not like giving up on the pot, but since I have absolutely no backdoor, and if I like a draw card comes on the turn, I don't know if it's good for him, so I don't know if I have to barrel them. It's just not that good of a spot. I think the board was pretty much hit his range really hard here. He's gonna have at least gutters a lot and pairs and stuff like that. So not a good board to c-bet. Good board to dealing my c-bet on though, because when he checks 2 times, I expect him to be just giving up quite a lot. Now the table, that guy, from what I remember, I'm gonna just look at his stats. They are of the deck. It is not working. Probably because I don't have any ends. I thought I saw him somewhere, but probably not. Bobu he might be like the last Australian guys. They just all play exactly the same way. The guy that just left. Here, 8-9 off. It's a bit weak for defense. I'm defending sometimes not. I'm gonna do it this time and hope something interesting happens. Not a good board to lead on, I think. Just gonna give up most of the time. So yeah, if I don't have any ends on him, it's probably a fish. But like I said, probably plays exactly like the Australian that just left. So all of my reads that I had on the other guy are still good, and he might be the same guy. I don't know. Maybe it's like the same guy who has 10 accounts. That could be possible very, very well. Here, 5s. Here I'm gonna get looked up quite a lot by ace-highs, but since I just don't have anything and my only way to win the pot is to bet, and I can represent pretty much any pair, I'm just gonna bet. 5s here, I'm gonna be facing at second bet a lot, and just my end is basically unplayable. Even if I do have the best end right now, because he's gonna be leading a lot of his draws, my end is just completely unplayable on feudal streets, so I'm just folding right now. Like, I'd much rather play ace-3 and ace-5 here than 5s, in case I hit something, and then I can bluff some cards and stuff like that, and I just have twice as many outs for basically nuts. And VT, who's the last new guy of the group, is probably a fish because he just sat down with what looks like the remaining of his bankroll. And that's it. And Burmasian, I know I've played with him in the past, but maybe not on my laptop. Yeah, that might be what's happening. That's guys that I haven't played on my laptop, so I don't have any ends. And I just remember that basically they're bad. I think this guy is like bad too aggressive, and this guy is bad too nitty, but I'm not sure. I should take more notes, but I most of the time I just rely on my memories as far as read goes. I don't take a lot of notes. Like I have a note here, but it's basically just a color, like the color for all the Australian guys that all play the same. Here I think I'm gonna be checking back that flush draw. It does not expect me to check back flush draw a lot on this board, and I can still represent, like if I miss on turn it checks again, I can take down the pot quite often. And if the flush comes, it's gonna be pretty well disguised. So I think checking back and not being check raised by a king here or an higher flush draw. If I do get check raised, it's kind of tricky to like call the check raise on that flop, because he's gonna be doing that with like air, which might two barrel, and if I don't hit, I'm in deep shit. And with the ace I flush draw a lot, so if I do it, I'm not even sure if I'm good, and with full houses and stuff like that. So on a paired board like that, it's just bad to go crazy with a low flush draw. So I just often use those to check back and then mix my plays for all the times that I'm gonna be c-betting a flush draw on the flop. Here, king queen offsuit, I'm sometimes 3-betting that against some opponents, but my standard is definitely gonna be to just call and play the pot out of position again. As you can see, when I'm deep against good players, I am calling out of position way more than I'm re-raising, because if I re-raise too much, I'm basically giving them way too good opportunities to outplay me by calling position, then doing some plays and using their positions in big pots. So I just keep the pot small, which is standard thing to do. Here, if the board would have been like 9 and the 7 of diamonds too, I might have dunk lead, because you cannot raise too often on such a dry board. Now it's so like it's way too dry, so I'm like, if I dunk lead and I get raised, I cannot like go over the top and like bet 3-bet as a bluff, which I might do on more dry boards, trying to represent like basically a set or a big draw if I think he's full of shit himself, if he's raising way too many of my dunk leads. But I don't have much of a read as far as how he reacts to dunk leads, so I don't want to like bet, and I think I'm gonna get raised a lot on that board and even float in and stuff. So certainly not a good board to dunk bet on with my end, that is. And yeah, more drawy board, since I can represent just more stuff by dunk leading. I could have done that, but not that time. Here, jacks 100 big blinds deep against black swan. I basically have the super nuts on a cutoff versus button dynamic. If the dynamic is like under the gun versus button, I'm calling that most of the time, but with our historic and stuff, cutoff versus button, he knows that I'm aggressive, and I'm still super aggressive, so I just have the nuts. And I'm just gonna hope that he spazzes with something that I can get value. Here I'm gonna be c-betting. Board is pretty dry, and someone might have an ace, and now I jizz in my pants. I am gonna double barrel, because I'm just double barreling a lot as a bluff. So he knows it, so he might just check, shove, a draw, or whatever, that thing that I'm full of shit, or just call me down with anything. So yeah, here I'm very okay with c-betting my total. No! C-betting my total air, because I'm gonna have easy decisions on the streets after that. No. We're still 4 after I bet, then the flush comes, so it's a no-brainer. Kings now, pretty nice ends. I do 3-bet. I do have a pretty... No, I don't have like that deep. We're even like deeper than 200 big blinds here. I wouldn't say I have a polarized 3-betting range. That might be true at like 180 big blinds, something like that. But at 230, I can so profitably, like, if I think he's 4-betting a lot as the bluff, which I think he's gonna do, maybe not in these positions, but let's say he's like under the gun +1. I basically no longer have a polarized 3-betting range. I'm gonna be doing like the 3-bet with like king queen suited or any ace suited or stuff like that, ace jack suited, stuff like that, quite a lot. Looking to like call the 4-bet and play a 4-bet pot in position. So as deep as that, and I'm gonna be doing it with like tens too, just taking the position, taking the 4-bet pot and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty easy to balance since I'm not that polarized. Doing it for pure value with basically aces and kings too. I'm just gonna look at the eagle stats. Eagle 3-4. I don't think I even have hands on that guy. Or it's just not working actually. Yeah, I might have hands. I just hate those. No, I did not have hands on eagle prior to that session on my laptop too. So HUD would have been pretty useless there. I have him at 30-20, but that's only for that session, so it's pretty useless. I'm just gonna go with my reads too. Black's one I think is running at like 26, 22, something like that. J-Van's in the same waters as well, pretty good, aggressive style. Not as loose as I am, but let's say pretty semi-loose and good aggressive, if that makes any sense. Jack 4 offsuit, I am not playing those cards. King 10 offsuit, yeah, they are very off the deck. Here is definitely a fish. Finally, he's not even reloading, and he times out his button, which is pretty fishy move to time out your button, since he's probably even one tabling. I'll look at how many tables he's playing. When you don't have any read on someone and you suspect him to be a regular or you don't know what, just look at how many tables he's playing. That's often a good indication, and he's playing 2, so yeah, most probably a very bad guy, and he's not sizing his 3-bets in position very well. I would say he's doing it very poorly. So one more indication of a bad player. Maybe not a bad person, I don't know him. If he's listening, I might want to be his friend, but he's not good at cards. And he's all in. Ace king against it. I really don't like the eagle shove here. Really, really, really don't. I think it's just flat out mistake, seriously, eagle, if you're watching that. I don't get it. Unless you have some kind of, like, more better read on me than on this guy, but he's like re-raising, like snap re-raising pot, like, yeah, pot. Like, he has ace king a lot, and a lot of big ends too. And he's just committed all the ways, and I don't think he ever like 3-bets call ace jack, even if he's retarded against an under the gun and an under the gun opener, under the gun +1 caller for 60 something big blinds. I think it's just very big mistake from coming from eagle here to go broke with ace queen. Seriously. So guys, don't do that at home. Like, just give him credit, give that guy credit, unless he might have some read, and that might be good, but like, let's say your default fish, but not too maniac fish, they just tend to, like, if they have ace jack or ace 10, they most likely tend to call, even against, like, under the gun +1, especially against those guys, so he's just gonna call in position way too often, so he's not, like, 3-bet calling that often, so yeah, just a mistake, basically. I think. Starting to repeat myself. That's it for part 1, guys. Stay tuned for the next part later and give me feedback in the thread and all the normal stuff. Bye bye.